Shaun, if you're ready, I will hand over to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay? Yep. Cool. Well, actually, I'll look at this slide down here rather than the screen. So I'm Shaun. I'm Associate Director for Data Access and Analysis at the National Institute for Health and Care Excellence, which everyone handily just calls NICE. So my job basically entails getting access to different real-world data sources and then heading up our small but perfectly formed analytical team to support development of NICE products. So firstly, just like a real quick thing about NICE and what we do, because not everybody knows what we do. So we help practitioners and commissioners get the best care to people fast while ensuring value for the taxpayer. So the idea is we're trying to produce guidance which looks at the best way to deliver care while also making sure it's value for money. And we focus on what matters most to make sure we're looking at the most high-level priority topics to make sure, we're not just doing something for the sake of it. It's important to the clinical community. We provide rigorous, independent, and complex evidence reviews of health technology. So health technologies basically means medicines when NICE talk about it. A lot of people think we're talking about maybe medical devices, but we mean medicines primarily, and we have a funding mandate associated with that. So if NICE approve a medicine to be used in the NHS, it has to be provided within 3 months of us saying yes to it, unless there's a funding variation agreed with NHS England. And also we encourage the uptake of our guidance as well. So everybody knows the health and care system is changing. There's obviously a lot of health system pressures. Obviously there was leading up to the election and there will be going forward. There's increasingly more informed patients, perhaps in some way by what NICE do. There's growth in innovation, new technology, AI, etc. And there's vast amounts of health data now. And that really became apparent during the pandemic as well. So if you think about national data collections in England in particular, we used to have our big primary care data sets. And then in the pandemic, we had an explosion of data with Open Safely and some of the GP data for COVID as well. So there's vast amounts of data. And so NICE needs to transform too, and we need to respond to the health system pressures and what they're looking at. So our core purpose remains the same, to make sure we're being transparent, again, getting the best care to patients as quickly as possible while ensuring value. But yeah, as the NHS changes, we need to make sure we change too. And this basically is the same thing, so I'll skip that. So what is real-world data, and what do NICE define real-world data as? So at NICE, we traditionally, our kind of communities and our committees that make decisions for us have usually looked at evidence in terms of clinical trials and particularly randomized controlled trials. So we define anything as real-world data that is related to patient health experience or care delivered outside of those kind of rigorous, if you like, clinical trials. Well, obviously you can have rigorous real-world data studies as well. So you can get that data from service evaluations and audits, or you can get it from routinely collected data. And I think my job and my preference is to try and look at those routinely collected data sources and how we can use those to help with our decision making. And then you can get some qualitative things from specific research or patient cohorts, registries, and things like that. So if you analyze real-world data, you then get real-world evidence. So how do we kind of envisage we might use some of this real-world evidence? So it helps us contextualize the patient or user experience, helps us to characterize disease so we can understand the care pathway, and in particular, we're interested in things like lines of treatment. So if someone has a type of cancer, they might have one line of treatment, might skip to another, and trying to characterize what happens to those patients in the real world. The impact of technologies to deliver care as well helps us generalize trial results. So sometimes trials are done in very specific patient populations, so how does that apply to the real world? Effect of technologies on patients and the outcomes, and a really important one at the end there is populating and validating economic models. So NICE makes a lot of decisions, especially around cost effectiveness on the use of health economic models. And healthcare models can be really quite large, and you have different parameters for those models. Oftentimes, they would be populated based on clinical opinion. So if we can use real-world data to start populating them, we can make sure they're more effective health economic models. So this is a piece of work done by IQVIA quite a while ago now. We've got 5 minutes left. Wow, that's gone really fast. Anyway, so it's basically showing that single technology appraisal, real-world evidence is being used much more. So single technology appraisal is basically when we're looking at a medicine. I will skip this slide, but basically saying that we're moving to secure data environments, common data models and federated data networks. So the idea of data, instead of being sent out to people to be used, is now being held centrally, and then people go to that data so they can use that data in a secure data environment, adhering to the 5 safes, as was talked about at one of the keynotes earlier. In terms of data that NICE access, so we access NHS England's secure data environment, or the National Secure Data Environment, so HES, secondary care data, IAPTN mental health services data sets, which is obviously addressing mental health, maternity service data, NHS BSA dispensing data, which is community medicines data, and then ONS death registry. We also have partnerships with NDRS for NCRAS, which is cancer data for some projects, CPRD, which is a big primary care data source. We do have access to Genomics England's TRE. We don't use it that much right now, but we will do probably more as we start assessing gene therapies. And then we have a partnership with the Bennett Institute at Oxford University, which is mostly focused on analytical techniques rather than data access, but it's just in there for now. So these are some influential use cases of real evidence at NICE and what they're being used for in different technology appraisals. But if I go into a specific example, and this is quite a busy slide, but what it's essentially showing you is a treatment pathway using real-world evidence. So it's about 1,300 patients with renal cell carcinoma, across 15 UK health centres, who are getting systemic anti-cancer therapy for their renal cell carcinoma. And it's showing you, using real data, how they're going through their pathway. So on the right-hand side, sunitinib, it's kind of showing you, unfortunately, some patients do die, and then no progression, or they might switch to a different medicine. And why we wanted to do this is because we were giving this data in trial arms by a competitor. So they wanted to kind of bring their drug to market and say, oh, we'll compare it to this using our trial. And we wanted to see, well, what if we looked at the real data? So I don't have a laser pointer, but so if you take if you kind of maybe ignore the darkest line at the top, but the dashed line is sunitinib. So sunitinib is the what people are given as standard care. And that's the trial data, and and then the coloured lines at the bottom is the real-world data. So from that data from those different centres. So what it's basically showing you is that in the trial, they're overestimating the survival of patients, basically using sunitinib, and therefore you can assume they're probably overestimating the effect of their own medicine. So what that allows us to do is say, actually, we're not sure what you're saying is true. So how about we reconsider maybe some of your costs, maybe what the patients you're looking at, and we'll revisit your technology appraisal. It may mean that NICE can make a better decision and say, actually, no, we don't think this will be clinically and cost effective for the NHS. But that's a good example of where we use it for decision making. And we've also done some real data for our lipids guidelines. So this is to look at people who are taking statins. So this was using primary care data linked to secondary care data linked to ONS death data. So this is looking at people with CVD who are on statins to estimate their further risk of CVD events, their baseline mortality, the mortality after a CVD event, and then cholesterol distribution. And we use this data along with some Health Survey for England data to populate, again, economic models, as I talked about earlier. And then that was enabling us to set treatment thresholds, so brand new treatment thresholds, so when people should get lipid lowering therapy. That can be quite controversial. Some people think that NICE say yes to statins too easily, but what it means is that more patients are potentially getting statins, preventing CVD events in the future, and hopefully reducing the burden in NHS, and obviously, most importantly, improving patients' lives. So I will end on our future challenges and things we are interested in. And I think NICE is always open to research collaborations, always open to work with people. So obviously, we're really interested in AI. That's in a few different ways. So where medtech is using AI, where AI has been used for evidence generation, so where AI is being used to generate data as well. There's more data coming along, not just AI. So there's obviously synthetic data can be generated by AI, but it is its own thing. Data generated by people's wearables, We want to work more on the use of subnational secure data environments. I don't think the system's quite there yet, but we're interested in those, and federated data networks. Something is kind of my pet project that I'm interested to work with lots of different people on is clinical coding validation. So when we're doing data analysis, how do we know using the most appropriate clinical code? So currently in discussions with the Bennett Institute about that and HDR UK, but welcome others to get involved, and maybe we can kind of come to some kind of national consensus about the best way to validate clinical codes. Obviously challenges around missing data, macro and micro. So like macro, it's quite hard to get cancer data, for example, sometimes. There's certain things missing from it. MedTech, there's basically no data that we can find nationally anyway. And then micro, things like just general quality issues. Kite marking, NICE might want to give an opinion on what good data looks like, and maybe we give a nice endorsement to that, or something kind of accreditation to say, if you're doing research on secondary care data, you should use HES as an example. Automated reporting, and finally, computable guidance. Again, they're kind of another two pet projects of mine. So computable guidance is how NICE writes its guideline in a certain way, so it's more easily interpreting clinical systems. I'll stop there because I'm running out of time.
Great. Thank you so much. That was really well done. I'm really impressed by people who can sum up so much in 10 minutes. We just have one question so far. Bianca, do you want to read that one out?
Do you think the finding about overestimating survivability in trials applies to other trials, or just that one?
Probably, yeah. And I think particularly in technology appraisals, so where we assess medicines, that's why we'll start using real-world data more and more. And I think we'll probably start establishing more like a program of work of how to respond to that. The challenge of technology appraisals is that NICE, 80% of technology appraisals-ish are for cancer, and cancer data isn't always readily available in the same way as some other data sets. So if the data's there, then I think we'll start using it more often.
Thank you. We have a question here.
Hi, I'm Sarah Parsons, Health and Research Lead from HACT. Just actually similar sort of point, looking at when NICE guidance, NICE approval is given to a new drug, obviously looking at the pivotal data that's the phase 3 pivotal data that's gone towards gaining license and then going through the approval process. Do you not think that the sort of deviation in what you're seeing in real world data is because obviously if you're going through a clinical trial, then the concordance for the patient, you know, with all of the process is going to be much higher. Obviously cancer is different, but generally then you have to bear in mind that out in the real world people are missing medication, etc.
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot of caveats that we have to bear in mind, like concordance, adherence, all those kind of things are an issue we have to think about. But I think the biggest difference that that's one's obviously quite like specific, and we have to see how it plays out in the future. It's just the patient cohorts are different. So basically in the real world, you just get much sicker patients in general. They have more comorbidities, which are all controlled for in a trial because that's what trials do.
I think we have one more question. Did Lisa?
I can just talk to Matt.
Are you sure? I think we might have time, do we?
Okay. Do you think there is, how do you manage the risk that in talking about real world data, people start to think you can do anything and undervalue expensive trials?
Yeah, that's a good point actually. So I think that's something we have to do internally at NICE. We have to manage people's expectations that real-world data has a place, and I'm not suggesting, and I guess the message from NICE in general is we're not suggesting real-world data does replace rigorous randomized controlled trials. I think one thing I talked about at the beginning is it's there to try to contextualize what the trials say and see how generalizable the findings of trials are to the general population as well. So yeah, there's no message here that we're replacing trials, but real data definitely does have its place in how NICE assesses products.
Fabulous. Thanks so much. Thanks very much, Shaun. That's fantastic.